Hey, coming up in a few minutes, Cubs postgame live from Wrigley. David Kaplan and David Jesus with many thoughts on this game, plus postgame reaction from Dusty, Madden, Strasburg, etc. here on NBC Sports Chicago. So we've been avoiding it for 50 minutes. We'll talk about the Cubs game right now, as the Cubs are trailing right now 5-0 in the ninth. So much to talk about here, but the big blow obviously was the grand slam by Michael Taylor in the eighth off of Wade Davis. An interesting pitching change that was made by Joe Madden.
Interesting is the word that you use.
1-0 count.
Bit of a euphemism there, I think.
How much flack is he going to get, assuming that the Cubs do not win this game?
Well, I think he's going to get a lot of flack, and I think he deserves it. Carl Edwards Jr., other than his hiccup versus Bryce Harper on Saturday, has been one of the best relievers in baseball. Michael A. Taylor is not exactly one of the heavy hitters in that Nationals lineup. He's not the guy you would expect to hit a grand slam if you were picking out of their lineup. So, I would have probably left Edwards in, and if I was going to pull him, I certainly would not have done it with a 1-0 count. What a terrible situation to put Wade Davis in, bringing him in with the bases loaded, down in the count. It's just, you were just setting up your closer for failure there. It's just indefensible.
That's always, we hear that cliche a lot in sports, where it's the job of the manager or the coach to put your players in the best position to succeed. And in that particular situation, that's not what happened there.
Right. It's almost like a double whammy, because he also, I'm not that Carl Edwards is going to be shattered by this, but he now feels like, oh, he doesn't have faith in me.
Right.
And he put Wade Davis in a tough spot.
And going back to even Game 7 of the World Series last year and throughout this series, even it just feels like even when Madden may make the correct bullpen move, it just hasn't turned out well. Like, no matter what he's done, like the other night in Game 3, it just seems like no matter what button he pushes, it just hasn't quite been the right one in a key situation.
Yeah, and in this situation, in this game, you'll look at it and say, okay, they're down 1 run. They were just in this situation in Game 3. They came back and won. Strasburg's coming out of the game. You know that you've got 6 outs to play with going forward. And I don't mind there if he puts Davis in at the beginning of that at bat. If he says, look, you know what, Davis is the best guy we've got. We're throwing our best arm out there. That's how we're going to roll. Fine. But when Carl Edwards throws a pitch, Wade Davis mentally says, okay, I'm not coming in this at bat.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, he sees the arm come up. It's like, all right, Joe, I'm coming in.
Yeah.
And then 2 pitches later, game's over.
You're already at a 1-0 count. I mean, that might seem like nothing, but that's something.
The bases loaded.
And the bases are loaded. And if you make a bad pitch here, it's now 2-0. It was 1-1. Throws a fastball after that, and it's a home run. And meanwhile, Steven Strasburg is going to feel such a sense of relief, what he had to go through. I mean, who knows what the truth was and what really was going on with him. But I think the entire city of Washington, D.C., wanted him. They were not happy with him up until the first pitch here today.
No, not happy. Probably another understatement, like you said.
And then he was amazing. Pitched like the game of his life.
Yes, absolutely. His flu game, I guess you could say.
The flu game, the mold game.
The mold game, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, he was absolutely dominant today. I don't know if many people expected. I mean, at his best, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. We all know that. But I think a lot of people thought, bringing his mental or intestinal fortitude into question a little bit, his ability to pitch with a little bit of an illness or a mold issue.
Well, now, did they switch hotels? I read that they switched hotels. Did they really? Did anyone see this?
I didn't see that, sure. But that would be the most baseball thing ever, right? Like, only in baseball would that happen. If you say, well, the mold's getting to us. Listen, ultimately with Strasburg, if he came out today, and you kind of alluded to it, if he got shelled today, it would have been a firestorm in the nation's capital. As it turns out, he pitches incredibly, and now, assuming they go back here for Game 5, you have a situation where Washington, now the pressure's more on the Cubs.
And that's the funny thing. I think the pressure is now back, believe it or not, on the Nationals, because they've never won a playoff series. They get Game 5 in their home. You better win. you better win.
That's nervous.
I think you're right,
atmosphere.
Chuck.
Yeah, because the Cubs already won a World Series. They won the World Series. I mean, granted, this is a disaster here today, but the bigger pressure, I think, is on the Nationals.
I think you're right, but I also think like that's that whole who's got the pressure thing. Like once the game starts, I think it's like who cares at that point. But I do think you're right from a psychological advantage. I do think the pressure is still on the Nationals just because they haven't been there.
To me, this feels like I was saying it. I didn't expect a grand slam by Michael Taylor. But when it was 1-0, my prediction was the Nationals are going to win this game, and then they're going to go into D.C. and they're going to lose. And the Cubs will win it in 5. I'm laughing. I don't know why I'm laughing. Like the Nationals have never won a playoff series, and I'm like, how can we make it as bad as possible for the Nationals? They'll win this game, they'll go home, and they'll lose.
The good thing for the Cubs here, despite the fact that this game was a backbreaker, is they have Kyle Hendricks going in Game 5.
Yeah.
Washington could do nothing against him in Game 1 of this series. He has been coming up so huge in big games, whether it was against Clayton Kershaw last year in the NLCS, Game 7 of the World Series. He shows up when the pressure is on, when all of the attention is on him. I think they got a good shot.
And it's going to start probably with Gio Gonzalez and with Max Scherzer waiting in the wings if they need him. That's going to be some game, assuming the Cubs don't come back and win this one in the 9th. That's a wrap for Sports Talk Live, presented by the Chevy Silverado. Remember, subscribe to the Sports Talk Live podcast at NBCSportsChicago.com/podcast. Cubs Postgame Live will be coming up when the game is over. Next.